Well, Holly, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. You are let me give you a quick introduction. An actress, a model, a mother, a public figure. What else do you do? Do you do poetry too?
I do poetry as well, yes.
What would you say is the biggest difference between not Muslim Holly and Muslim Holly?
I want to say anger. I used to be very angry. I mean, not like not like to people or anything like that, but I think I just had a lot of like built up anger issues and just a lot of trauma that I didn't know how to deal with. And I think Islam, thankfully, over time has helped me really assuage that anger.
Do you want to get into that? Are you okay with me asking what kind of trauma?
That's a little deep. It's an abuse issue, so I don't want to get into like too much because I mean, like, it's not like I'm protecting anybody involved. There's nobody alive today who is actually the person who did that to me. I mean, when you, especially as a woman, when you suffer some kind of like sexual abuse or whatever, and especially like at a young age, like I was like 11, it can mess you up like for life. And I think just as a Christian I wasn't getting what I needed from from that tradition, and through my research and like Buddhism, I wasn't receiving like the nurturing love and mercy that I feel like I needed to like really expand and grow from that trauma. And it was only through like, because your environment is everything, right? I mean, like, if you're someone who's lived through some trauma, like, you need to be in a space where like people are comforting and take care of you. And I feel like once I met like my, husband and his Muslim friends, it was like, finally, I was in this space where I felt safe. I didn't feel like I had to be, in my angry thoughts anymore. And like, also,
one of the things that the Prophet told us not to do, right?
Yeah. And so that's what I've tried to, obviously, as a Muslim, like, those thoughts, like, you have assuming the best, reading du'as, dhikr. I think dhikr is like a saving grace for me. I mean, even to this day. And that is like, obviously brings peace to your heart.
Especially probably at a young age, because most young kids do that. Push it down. I went into like a lot of like listening to music to try to cope to at first when I was in high school. And then obviously, like, I mean, that's temporary, but I think Islam, of course, is like that really puts me at ease. What was your view of God at that time? Was it still positive?
It was borderline. So when it was great that I had a really great best friend in high school growing up who was Christian, and her parents were great. They would go to church together, and I would go with her to church. And like, I had a good view of God during those times. But then I went to college, and she didn't go to the same college as me. She ended up going to a different college, and so it was really hard for me. I kind of just didn't know where I was at, and I decided, I'm agnostic, but I wouldn't practice anything. It's not like I didn't go to church, and I wasn't surrounded by people who were doing that. So I think my view, it wasn't like it was negative, but I was really coming to a point where I'm like, does he exist? I think that was what was happening, and it was like through meeting actual Muslims and seeing their actions.
Were you raised religious or?
No. We went to a United Methodist church. My dad had grown up Irish Catholic, and so we were just brought up Protestant. My mom was brought up Protestant, and we would go. I did confirmation. Is this something you do when you're like 14 if you're a Protestant? And did that, but I never felt anything. I was just so unaware and ignorant about what the importance, I think, of religion was. Not to say that I don't blame my parents. I love them so much. I know that that's how things are, but it's not like it was almost like a shameful thing to talk about God. Like, if you go to a lot of I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I know a lot of like Anglo-Saxon families, religion is kind of something that's very private. It's not to be talked about. You know, you don't even bring God up into your conversation. I mean, but look at us, like as Muslims, like even we say Bismillah, we say Inshallah, even in conversation, it's mentioned, which is like how it's supposed to be, but that it constantly reminds us that, you know, of Allah, you know, and we're not ashamed about it. I think that was another thing I was so struggling with to accept religion, is because I kind of was brought up in my culture where it was like believing in God was almost like a shameful thing, maybe, or just something that was very private. It was almost embarrassing to me to believe in it. And then finally, once I realized, oh, it's not an embarrassing thing, it was like, oh, I accept this.
So when did you even find Islam?
I found Islam in 2000, and well, I was.
Like, how old are you? You don't have to.
How
old were you?
Okay, so I was 21 when I started to do research about it.
Okay,
but
so
when I reverted, I was
college?
20. Oh no, I reverted when I was 21. Yes, when I was in college, it was my senior year.
What college did you go to?
Binghamton University in New York. Great school, great theater school, senior year of college. So that previous summer had gone to China on a theater trip, and we had visited like Western China, had seen the mosque, you know, and that kind of started some questions for me. I just knew I needed God in my life.
What were the first questions that were sparked?
For me, I wasn't sure if I believed in God or not. So for me, it was never like, I'm Christian, I believe in Jesus. Jesus is, you know, an extension of God. And I never had that belief to begin with. Throughout my childhood, even, I didn't have that belief. But I knew something was missing. I knew religion was missing in my life. I wanted to be proven, you know, did God exist? And for me personally, I wasn't finding it in the Christian tradition. I had a lot of Jewish friends. I couldn't bear to think of ignoring the fact that Jesus existed, because I believed he was a person that existed, but I didn't know in what regard, like in what way. I was like, this historically it makes sense. He really was a person, but in like what regard? And then I just started doing research, learning about like Ramadan and Muslims, like why they fast. And for example, like, you know, Muhammad, like peace be upon him, I think what really affected me was the tree of prophets. You know, it goes back from Adam alayhi salam and Hawa radiallahu, and it goes through all the different prophets, and it shows who's related to who. And you know, Muhammad, peace be upon him, is on there too. And when I saw the connection between Ibrahim alayhi salam and all these other, you know, they were all connected. To me, it was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been looking for. Like, this is the completion of what I've been looking for. You know, that's where I think I got really affected. When I went to high school, we were taught, you know, Islam, there were the 5 pillars of Islam. These are what they are. And that's all you need to know. There was no distinction or connection. You know, it's almost like we were taught that Islam was completely foreign. And we grew up knowing that Christianity and it was a continuation of Judaism. I mean, I knew that. All of my friends knew that. But I didn't know there was something further. You know, it's like that was never taught, that they believed in, you know, that Muslims believed in the same prophets. I think once I saw that there were deep similarities, but at the same time, everything was made more clear to me when I read about Islam. Like, nothing seemed fuzzy. You know, when I would go to the Bible and look up something, everything just seemed very confusing. It just was very clear to me. That's when I was really sure, because I wanted to be proven, you know, and it was like once I believed in God, I was like, I can only become Muslim because this is laid out for me, you know, and the fact that Jesus is also not a godly figure and he's a Messiah, but he's also just a prophet in person as well. To me, that was like, that is what had always made sense. And I never found a tradition that could represent that for me. And finally, Islam was the answer. So
it was the only religion that truly brought
everything that was already in my heart, all those stories. It finally came together in a way that I was completely wholeheartedly accepting of.
Man,
yes,
comprehensive man.
Yes. So alhamdulillah.
Was there a moment? Was there like that moment where you said, "There's no way I could be anything other than Muslim"? I'm going to become Muslim now.
I can't pinpoint it exactly, but I can definitely tell you that actions speak louder than words, because like I had never met Muslim people before. I mean, in the high school I grew up in, I think there were like 2 other Muslim people, and I wasn't really close to them. But in the friends that I had in college, seeing how they talked to each other, how respectful they were to each other, how gentle they were with each other, how understanding, and just seeing that in action combined with the knowledge that I had researched myself, I was like, this is something different. This isn't like a joke. This is something different. And I just knew it was for me. It's like, I just knew. I can't remember an exact moment where I was like, oh, this, like something happened, like a spark or a light bulb. And I don't think for the majority of Muslims who revert, I don't think it's like that to a degree. I know there are a lot of reversion stories out there where it's like, oh, the light, I turned to a page and it was like God speaking to me, and like, oh, like angels singing, it wasn't like that for me. It was just through, it was eventual acceptance that this was what it was. It was like eventually the veil lifted and became clearer and clearer, more clear to me. So
did your family accept you when you became Muslim?
Yeah. My parents are very open-minded and very easygoing, and my mom honestly thought it was a phase at first. I think because I had a friend who was vegan in high school, and she was like, oh, this is just like another phase. Vegan. And I was like, I'm like, even if like I hadn't met my husband, I think I'm like, definitely I can see myself being a Muslim, like for life. Like no matter what happens, I'm going to be Muslim. And I just knew it, inshallah. And I just knew it because I just knew how true it was to me. It's almost like it didn't matter what she said, but they were easygoing. I think once I started to cover, because I wasn't covering at first, then there were more questions and tension. But I mean, I would just answer things as best as I could. And
how about your friends?
My friends, I've lost some friends, not in a dramatic way. 2 of my friends I know were partly freaked out because I think, like I was saying, since there's so much misrepresentation of what Muslims are in the media and just like what my friends do. I mean, the friends who I'm talking about are mostly high school friends who I grew up with. Like my college friends were I have not really lost college friends, thankfully. But, and some high school friends, growing up and experiencing 9/11 together and just maybe whatever they're watching and through the media, I think that it kind of affected them.
And what was kind of your experience when you first entered Islam?
To be honest, the first year, I mean, I wish I could get back that year because like there's such a peace in really, there's just, because you're clean. You're like brand new. I mean, that peace, that inner peace of just knowing that you're in a good space now, you're in good hands is just, that is great. I mean, if you have the right people around you in your environment, you're going to be on the right track. I think it depends on the person's environment because I know I've heard some friends who felt like they were kind of thrown like prayer rug, a hijab, a tesbih, and kind of like expected to cover the next day and just kind of transform their life. And like, I'm grateful that I really was in an environment where I took everything so slowly. I learned the prayers in English first. I would, for the first 2 years, I don't think in my prayers I used Arabic because I didn't have a teacher. It was only when I moved to DC and I went to Sunday school, like I finally was able to get a teacher who was able to teach me, like how to read Arabic and how to recite surahs. And for me, it was honestly, maybe at first what was it? I think even hijab at first, I was like something that I was always questioning. Like, I didn't know if I was ever going to wear it because I was just questioning, like, what's the point? I didn't understand maybe the reasoning behind it. And I remember I went to, oh my goodness, I'd started wearing like conservative things, where I was wearing longer, looser clothing. And I just felt more comfortable that way. Like naturally that just came to me as something like as a natural progression for me, but I wasn't wearing a scarf. And I remember I think I was going to the market and I went to pick up something and there were these guys there and they started like hitting on me or something. And I got really offended and really flustered and the anger issue came out again. And I think I like gave them the middle finger or something. And I said something and I walked out and I was like, who was that? I'm like, who am I now to sink to this kind of level of just like, did I lose myself just now? Like what happened? Like, I feel like it made me realize maybe they shouldn't have said that regardless of it's not like, oh, I need to put on a scarf because of what they said. It was almost like I was upset about how I had reacted to it. And I'm like, you know what? There's probably a reason why you should be wearing a scarf, to obviously cover some of that. Mm. And also I was reading up more about, like Mother Mary. And I was always using that example once I started covering, like my friends who were really curious about me covering too. I would always mention like, well, in front of your Catholic church, Mary's there wearing her veil, and she's covered. I realized I wanted people to recognize at that point that I was Muslim as well. Like I realized I wasn't being recognized as being Muslim. And that is what it says in Quran too. It's like people should know you as being Muslim. This is part of the, identity. And so I knew that I wasn't visibly Muslim and I wanted to be. And so that those two kind of like combination of thoughts where I kind of had this like really crazy reaction to these guys. And I was like, oh, like, whatever, I'm going to wear a scarf. And like the next day I put on a scarf and I haven't taken it